we're going to talk to Scott, who's also been doing fair price warning and gouging plans of actions for sellers who are dealing with these issues. He's been doing it for a long time, has a great reputation. So hang in there. You're going to be very educated on this topic as you hang with us today. So Scott, tell me, how could sellers, Amazon sellers, prevent those dreaded fair price warnings and these gouging issues, the dreaded plan of action? Like, how can we be in prevention mode?
I think if you're paying attention to the warnings as they come through and doing that on a regular basis, staying on top of them, that's really important. So you want to make sure that you're responding to all the warnings. And then one mistake I've seen a lot of clients making is they'll go in immediately and delete all of the listings that are associated, and you don't want to do that. When you delete the listing as an immediate response, one of the things that does is it makes it really difficult to adjust your pricing. So you certainly want to go in and adjust your pricing, but the best practice would be to close your listing as opposed to delete it. One of the other things you want to do is you are best off if you can adjust all of your pricing via a flat file upload. And that way you have a case ID associated with the adjusted pricing that you can cite later on if need be in a plan of action.
Very good. Wait, and that's great advice. What categories are you advising, if any, people stay away from right now or be extra cautious about? Because you're handling a lot of these suspended seller issues.
Right.
What trends are you seeing?
The biggest ones would be the items that you would expect Amazon to be paying special attention to right now. So if that includes things that are in health and beauty, but in particular like soaps and items that people are using for cleaning or sanitizing, anything that has keywords associated in it, the bots pick up a lot of keywords that could easily be part of a different type of product that they might not should be focused on. But for instance, like as an example, masks. Obviously, not all masks are associated with breathing or protecting your ability to breathe or preventing some sort of a inhalation of something that you don't want. Sometimes it's different. Maybe it's dust, or maybe it's a Halloween mask, or maybe it's a CPAP
Right.
mask, or I've seen a lot of false positives also. But certainly for sanitizer, certainly for any PPE, certainly for things that would be known like for Clorox types of products, all those kinds of things you would want to pay special attention to. But one other thing that I think sellers miss out a lot on noticing and paying attention to is if you go through all of your existing inventory that you're no longer selling. You should be doing that on a regular basis anyway, but especially right now, why would you want to have that sitting as a time bomb in your account where you're no longer selling that product and you have no intention of replenishing? You might as well go ahead and close those listings.
Not delete, but close.
Yeah.
Right. Beautiful. So at what point would you suggest, and I know this feels a little random, this question in the order we're going in, but people are these are the most popular questions people are asking us right now.
Right.
At what point would I need a pro like you to help with a plan of action if requested from Amazon, or with a suspension issue? What can I handle on my own, and at what point is it time to call Scott?
Right. I normally would encourage you to do everything you can on your own up until the point of getting rejected from your first plan of action. So if you want to take a stab at your first plan of action, I feel like that's fair and appropriate and wouldn't want to discourage you from doing that. But by the time you get your first rejection, and certainly your second one, it's time to call somebody in.
And speaking of plan of action, give me a crash course in, if I'm going to do that one myself, are there any magic words to avoid or that I should include? One of the tips, for example, that I've often heard is don't get emotional. Don't write your life story 8 paragraphs and talk about how your kid needs diapers. That doesn't go in your plan of action.
Sure.
Give us a few basic bullet pointers on how to write a good one if we're going to take a stab at it ourselves on that first round.
That's a great question. In fact, I'm planning on putting out more and more material to help sellers with this kind of thing, because I think every seller is going to get sick at some point. Everybody's going to experience at some point in time, no matter what you're selling, even if you're a private label seller, you're going to have a situation where you have to respond to seller performance with a plan of action, whether or not it's for an ASIN or whether it's an account suspension. You've got to be equipped with the resources to be able to respond adequately. And so, for that reason and many others, I strongly encourage sellers to be better prepared to be able to respond adequately. It's a normal thing, and it doesn't make sense to continue every single time that you need an expert to pay and pay and pay,
Sure.
when you can do a lot of that work on your own if you have a understanding of what Amazon's looking for. And so, in terms of plan of action, some of the things that I think about is, well, what a plan of action is not, right? You aren't just making up an apology or saying you're sorry simply to be able to check a box, hoping that you can get Amazon to reinstate you or to reinstate your ASIN so that you can sell it again. And I feel like that mindset is a wrong approach, and it's not going to get you where you need to be in the long run if you're a serious seller and wanting to run a healthy account long term. And so I think that the better mindset is actually to figure out exactly what the problem is. Amazon gave you a performance notification either in your account health dashboard or in your performance notifications or via email. And it's your job to look at that and find out exactly what they think is wrong. And then before you start to write anything, before you do any kind of panicking, you've got to figure out exactly how that problem came about, where you would find that in your account, and then you've got to begin to fix it. In fact, I would encourage you to go through all the steps to fix that problem before you even begin to write. And so the first part of the plan of action, in order for it to be effective, is you've got to identify root cause and then say what you've done to fix it shortly after that. Root cause needs to be succinct. I think you could normally cover that in a paragraph. It depends how many ASINs you're being cited for. And so after you've established root cause and are quite confident about what it is, and it's a real problem, very difficult for anyone, even professionals, to be able to adequately address root cause if you don't know exactly what the problem is.
Well,
So
and
you want to be
speaking
pretty sure
specifically
of it.
about fair price warnings, though, here.
Yeah, I understand, but it's the same across any type of
Okay.
complaint, right? It's like whether it's an inauthentic, whether it's an IP complaint, whatever the problem is that you're going to be, you're up at bat. It's your opportunity to be able to explain to Amazon what the problem is, right? And so for a fair pricing warning, you're going to want to be familiar with the fair pricing policy. You're going to want to mention the marketplace fair pricing policy somewhere in your plan of action, that you're familiar with it and that you have gone through the steps in order to become compliant. And so you've got to identify, okay, you've been notified of these ASINs. Why were you in violation? How did you come to be in violation? And then shortly after you address the root cause, you want to be able to say what I've done to fix it. One of the things that you want to do is be able to say that you have adjusted your pricing. You want to have, if you're using a repricer, you want to have your min and max pricing set appropriately. You don't want to be over 10% above MAP or the fair market value. And so the thing that you want to keep in mind in the course of all of this as you write your plan is you want to be very clear and very concise. I keep a lot of my plans of action to one page if possible. Sometimes I go to 2 pages and hardly ever go beyond 2 pages. In fact, since I've been doing this since 2014, I could count on maybe 2 hands the number of times I've gone more than 2 pages. So that's something to keep in mind, especially when it's something as focused as like the fair pricing policy and price gouging.
Do you find that being contrite and apologetic helps, even if you're not in the wrong? And I'll give you a specific example. We have people who have had a product at the same price for months or years,
Right.
and out of the blue, suddenly it's price gouging. fair
Right.
price warning. Your prices are out of line. They can buy this product cheaper at Walmart. And you're like, I've been selling it for this price for 2 years. We have specific examples like that. It's an extreme example, maybe, but
I don't think
they're
it's
really putting the
extreme.
screws to us. So do you admit fault and you go in contrite and you've lost already because you've been accused, or can you push back against it? What's your experience?
Um, I can't remember more than a few times, maybe five grand total times in the past 6 years where we've pushed back and had it be successful.
Wow.
Um, and so
Wow. With
sometimes it does
probably a
merit
couple
pushback
thousand cases managed, if I'm at least.
easily,
Yeah.
easily. And I mean, sometimes that's my initial response. It's like I'm listening to you as a client, and I get indignant on your behalf because of the things that I see that you're experiencing that are completely unfair, that you're caught up in, and in fact, you did nothing wrong. That's a difficult situation, but I still, that's one of the reasons that you're paying a professional is for us to be able to step back and see the situation for what it
Mhm.
is,
Remove
completely
the emotion.
dispassionate.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. If you're emotional. I saw this with a business partner the other day. He was very upset with somebody that he was working with, and he responded to me with the emotion that he wanted to be able to express to them, and it didn't go well. I had to call him on it, right? And it's like, well, he
Yeah.
he accepted that and understood it, but it's something that you've got to understand in every situation. You don't let the sun go down on your anger in terms of if you've got a disagreement with your spouse or whatever, right? It never goes well if it's in the heat of the moment. And you don't want to respond to Amazon in the heat of the moment either.
That's beautifully said. Yeah, you've got to reduce the situation down to a number. I've talked many people off. I like that word indignant. They're just totally emotionally vested in the outcome that they want, and then you find out, well, they've only got 5 units of this ASIN, and they were going to make $28 if it went their way, as opposed to $10 if it doesn't. I'm like, really? You're going to go to war for this? Reduce it down to a number.
Yeah,
And this is why we teach also, you've got to be diversified, because at some point, I like what you said, we're all probably going to face the heat, probably going to have to come up with a plan of action. But like we always say, and let's see if this still holds consistent with you, Scott. I've been saying this for years, and I'm bouncing this off some of our other experts too. About 95% of the time, when you're called to the principal's office with Amazon, it's going to be okay, right? And unless you've done something just egregious and you know it, and you've tried to sell products that you just don't have, for example, right? Or
right.
you've tried to set up multiple seller accounts and you've kind of thumbed your nose or flipped them the bird and like at the process. But if you know that you're walking a borderline, it was a gray area, you got called out on it, you're going to fix it. Here's my plan of action. I'm sorry, I won't let it happen again. 95% of the time you get your account back. It could take some time, but is that number still accurate? Let's go there first.
I, I would quote the same number actually. I feel like, in fact, that's my track record, right? So I'm at least 95% of the time successful and better, right? But
Beautiful.
what's important to keep in mind is that doesn't mean that you're guaranteed to get back, and that number plummets dramatically if it's a second suspension or third suspension. You know,
Second, third.
second, third. I've gotten people back from fourth suspensions, but you don't want to be in that situation. I don't want to hold my breath for you, right?
They're
And
keeping track. That's right.
yeah, it's a difficult situation. You certainly are putting your relationship at stress to the point where they don't
Sure.
trust you anymore. And
What percent of the suspensions right now are fair price warning and gouging? Is coming across your desk?
Uh, I don't know that it's fair for me to quote a number on that because I only see what I see, right? I see a
Sure. I'm
portion
just
of the total
curious.
number of suspensions, but it's pretty small, right? And I think it has a lot to do with the other things going on in your account. So for them to just sort of pull the trigger and suspend you for price gouging, normally it's a newer seller or someone who has not been on the platform for a long time. I saw a seller that's been on the platform for 6 years suspended the other day. They had never had trouble before of any kind, but it wasn't just about price gouging. They also had a number of other performance notifications that they had not
Mhm.
responded to, and that's a big problem. You've got to respond to performance notifications. You can't just ignore them and expect them to go away.
Understood. Have you seen any of these cases where sellers are expected to match the prices of retail stores come across your
Um,
desk?
it's an important point, and one that needs to go in your plan of action. One of the things that that Amazon wants to know that you're doing as a seller is comparing your prices to other platforms. So you also want to mention that you're actively and regularly monitoring the price for these types of products on other platforms like Walmart and eBay and Target and whatever else might be appropriate. Because if you're not doing that, how can you possibly know if your price is fair?
Right. And, not to dive into the weeds of that debate, but probably one of my least favorite English words is fair,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it's
it's
literally
very
undefinable, right? Um, you know, the- just from the vantage point of, just taking my wife, for example, if she knows that Benadryl's $6 at Walmart, but we don't want to get in the car right now, put on our masks and go to the Walmart and walk around, we'll gladly pay someone $10 on Amazon,
yeah,
right? But Amazon with these policies, we'll pay four or five, we'll pay a 40, 80% markup, no, without hesitation. And millions of shoppers feel the same way. But yet sellers are being asked, and I'm not beating you up right now. This is kind of the system is kind of a little broke from this vantage point. A lot of sellers with a lot of ASINs are being told to sell it at the same price, although there's a lot of extra added convenience for the
right.
consumers. If they
I mean, you can't confuse logic and reason with the rules that you're being asked to abide by.
exactly.
So,
Thanks for allowing me to
um,
vent a little bit there. But and that's one of the reasons, Scott. I haven't filled you in on it, but one of the things we're doing right now is launching our own platform specifically for essential items,
yeah,
and we're not going to sell into the states that have the most restrictive price gouging laws.
yeah.
We're
So,
going to
I mean,
sell
that
into the
becomes
states that
complicated.
recognize margins go up, so margins stay steady when costs go up. Some states don't recognize that. The state of California does not recognize, for example, that if your costs double, they don't care. You're not allowed to raise your price more than 10%. Never
Yeah, that
mind that you
doesn't make
can't
any
even
sense at
produce the
all.
product, right?
It's not based in reality for them to not consider the cost of goods are increasing. The
Exactly.
the cost right now to buy a mask is higher than what it used to be at retail. It's just
Yeah. The
it's crazy,
price of production has shot up dramatically.
right?
Supply and demand, and you have to pay a lot more money to get people to go to work right now. Uh, you don't have to look far to find articles. People would rather be at home and get that check than go to work. So they're having to say, "Hey, we'll give you $5 more an hour if you'll come to work." Those
Sure.
costs go into the price of the goods. So the price of the goods go up. But Amazon's saying, no, you got to hold your price steady because California says no more than a 10% price increase. So we're getting squeezed as the resellers right now. We're getting squeezed, which is why we're launching our own platform. But I want to be very realistic. You've got to play the game by Amazon's rules right now. You can't go to
Exactly.
battle and give them a.
Exactly.
You can't get up on your what's the word I'm looking for, on your
High
platform.
horse.
What's that?
Your high horse.
High horse, or there's another better word for it. Someone's just saying it to the podcast right now. But you jump up and you're like, "Hey, Amazon, your rules are terrible. Here's why." That doesn't go into your plan of action. It's
Well,
going to get
part of your
rejected.
game plan as a seller needs to be to account for this discrepancy between reality versus what they want of you. And
That's
if
right.
every single time you get notified of something that's absolutely crazy, you can't get all upset about it and respond inappropriately. Your job is to be systematic and to look at the long game. I mean, your account is your golden goose, and you've got to protect it, and you've got to keep it healthy. And I don't. You've got to weigh the risks of taking advantage of a situation like this when I just don't think it's worth it in the long term. You
Yeah.
might make a few extra thousand or 100,000 or whatever right now, but if you lose your account, it's not worth it.
Yeah. And soapbox is the word I was looking for.
Uh,
And there are millions of other products you could be selling besides the one that you think is your bread and butter, and you're gonna fight to the death and claw tooth and nail and get Amazon to change their policies. No, you're not. So I think that's one of the stronger themes that's coming out here is you got to play by the rules. I find myself convincing sellers that, yeah, apologize, say, yeah, I was in the wrong. I was in the wrong. Even if you're selling a product at a loss, to play the game, you got to say, yep, I was in the wrong. I was gouging. I apologize. It'll never happen again. Here's my plan. I've compared my prices to all these other retail stores, then you move on and you maybe drift
Pretty
away from that
much.
product if you have to.
Yeah,
Right? And this
I
is
definitely would
temporary.
agree with that.
This is temporary. This is a game we have to play. Thank God. I mean, we're going to get through this and it's going to be back to normal, hopefully, as far as Amazon and pricing and gouging will be a distant memory. But for right now, this is an issue that a lot of people are having to deal with. And when I say a lot, I mean, we're seeing in our community, I hear 5 or 6 people a week, tens of thousands of sellers, and I'm hearing 5 or 6 people a week saying, "Yeah, I got a temporary suspension. How long is it going to take?" Which is my next question for you, by the
Yeah.
way. So I think the odds are still with you. If you're keeping an eye on your margins, just don't raise anything that's in the essential categories more than 10%, and you're going to get through this. But how long does it take right now? There's a bit of a bottleneck, it seems to me, to get
I,
people cleared.
I would agree. We never tell people an exact timeline because it's impossible to do so. There's no way to guarantee that someone's going to get back in a certain period of time. And so at one point, I had 6 different accounts that all showed up at the same time, and 5 of them were back within some in a week, some in 2 weeks. But then there's a sixth that's still suspended and shouldn't be. There's no reason why he shouldn't have been able to get back on. And I can't tell you why he hasn't, but it's time to escalate that.
Well, here's my last question, Scott. I mean, I could talk about this all day, but we've got a couple other experts on this episode today. So I'm going to bounce around some of these same ideas and a few other ones with them as well. But
Sure.
I don't want to let you get away before I find out how our listeners can get a hold of you if they want to hire a pro and what you bring to the game. This is your chance. Brag on yourself a little bit. Talk about what you've done, how many cases you've handled, that sort of thing. You're one of our most trusted partners in this arena. So I just wanted to give you a little chance to uh, basically toot your own horn for a second, man, and tell people what point they should call you and how they find you.
Sure. So one thing to know is there's no obligation, there's no cost just to have a conversation, and I think that's important for you to know. You don't have to have trepidation about picking up the phone or scheduling a call or sending an email. You can get a hold of me on Facebook Messenger, and the website is Ecomsellertools with one M as in Mary, Seller Seller Tools TOOLS.com. So you can reach me there. You can reach me on Facebook. It's email Scott at Ecomsellertools.com. I've been in this since 2014, consulting full time, and like many of you, a seller for several years before that. And so I understand what it's like to experience the pain of selling and to experience the pain of dealing with a situation where you might not really be at fault. And as you mentioned before, you like to say, hey, maybe it's important to be contrite, but you want to take responsibility. Amazon wants to know that whatever it is that they're alerting you about, that it's something that you've taken seriously and that that you're accountable and that you're taking responsibility for it before you just apologize. You're not apologizing and saying, I'm sorry, just to be able to get what you want, which is back on. You want to make sure that you've fixed whatever the problem is, and then you want to be able to tell them what you've done to fix it. So we've been successful with that for years now. And again, as far as when's the right time to get a hold of a pro, it's really after you've, if you want to, it can be before you've done anything, but certainly after you've received your first or second rejection.
Understood. Well, that's fantastic. And those links will all be in the show notes as well for those of you
Excellent.
who are listening while driving and didn't have chance to take notes, write down Scott's info. We'll have in the show notes at silentjim.com/podcast. Just scroll to the notes for this episode and you can check out Scott's work and his website and give him a call if you need him. And I think the favorite part of this episode so far for me today, for this conversation with you, Scott, was that magical 95% number. It's going to be
Yeah.
okay. Odds are very strong in your favor. It's going to be okay.
Don't
So
panic.
just you got to
Panicking
play
is
the game by
not
their
your friend.
rules,
Yeah.
right? There's always a way forward, though, and I love providing creative solutions for sellers. So you can go to bed at night and sleep well, knowing that you've got a viable business that's still going to be here And there's always creative ways forward no matter what you're facing. So, hey, thanks for hanging out with us today, Scott. Really appreciate you, man. Hope to see you soon, buddy. We're going to have another live event one of these days. And I know you've been to some of them in the past. We're looking forward to doing that again. And hopefully you can make it to one of those again with us.
Yeah, likewise. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for your time, buddy. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Okay, sounds good. Take care.